Hello, vinyl community and anyone else watching. Hedley here, another fat bearded man talking about records. This is the first video I've done, I think it's getting on for nearly a month. Life has just kind of gotten in the way. I know, pesky life. I mean, this is far more important than doing a master's degree. Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank any new subscribers out there. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to get on with this. There's a bit of everything, although there's a lot of country. I'm sorry. I am. No, I mean, for those of you who come here looking for other things, you'll be sadly disappointed. But there is some interesting stuff in here that isn't country. So they're from various places. I think some of them might have even been from the internet. Certainly the Doncaster Record Fair, which I spent far too much money at. Anyway, let's get on with this because I've got a little bit at the end I want to do. I'll come to that when we get to the end. Okay, so first things first. We've got Willie Nelson, Phases and Stages. Phases and Stages. This is from 74. This is on Atlantic. It was, I think there was 3 he did for Atlantic. And this is, if you want, Willie Nelson has done some dodgy stuff. The 80s were not good for Willie. And this is his purple patch. There might be other people that disagree, but Phases and Stages, I can't even say it. Shotgun Willie and Red-Headed Stranger, as a trilogy of records, you can't beat them. So they're not easy to pick up in this country because of them being Atlantic Records. I'm not quite sure whether they didn't have a distribution or something here. But this is it was recorded by Jerry Wexler, Muscle Shoals, so it gives us a bit of a clue. It's a bit more funky, similar in style to some extent with Shotgun Willie. But what it's got is it's a kind of a concept album of a kind of a doomed, failed relationship, and the first side with songs like Washing the Dishes, Pretend I Never Happened, they are sung from the perspective of the woman. And on the other side, on side 2, we've got Bloody Mary Morning, Still Can't Believe You're Gone, It's Not Supposed to Be That Way, and they are from the male perspective. It's a very, very fine album, one of Willie Nelson's best, and I was really pleased to pick that up for a couple of quid. This is Country Gazette, from the beginning. This is on the Sunset Records. This is a compilation from stuff from their first 2 albums, I think 1971, 72 or 72, 73. And it's kind of a progressive bluegrass. They were a group of musicians, Byron Berlin, Roger Bush, Kenny Wirtz, and Alan Mund, and they had been the backing band for Gene Clark and Dillard and Clark when they did their 2 albums. These were kind of the backing musicians. They played with some of them played with the Burrito Brothers, the Flying Burrito Brothers, that is, post Gram Parsons. And you've also got them, I think, some of them played with Stephen Stills on the Manassas, certainly the first album of them. It's progressive country. I mean, you've even got a song on it called Hot Burrito Breakdown. So it shows you their kind of where they've come from. Some sort of breakdowns, and The Lost Indian's good. I think The Fallen Eagle is a Stephen Stills song. So great, progressive bluegrass. We've got Los Lobos, The Neighborhood. This is from 1990. This is immediately after the La Bamba album that they contributed to, and the previous album, which was an album of traditional Mexican songs, or at least in the style of. And this is a move forward into a slightly more rootsy, well, they're always roots rock orientated, but this is a kind of a nice collection of blues rock, country rock. He's got Mitchell Froome produce one of these. So they're getting a bit more poppy, but it's a very, very fine album. Nothing much to see on the back. And that's on Slash, on London Records. So yeah, I'm enjoying picking up Los Lobos records. Bit further back, and we've got Harlan Howard. Harlan Howard sings Harlan Howard. Harlan Howard probably best known really as a writer, or at least a co-writer as well. He wrote over 1,000 country music songs, and had dozens and dozens and dozens of hits. Stuff like he worked for Buck Owens, or worked with Jimmy Wakely, Ray Price. I think, what was the one he did with wrote for I Fall to Pieces, he wrote for, or at least was recorded by Patsy Cline, that was his. Above and Beyond he co-wrote with Buck Owens. A really interesting guy. This is on my favourite reissue label, Stetson. I love a bit of Stetson, a British label. So this is originally on Capitol Records from 1961, and he seems a really interesting guy, Harlan Howard. Actually, hold your horses. He's in this book. This is In the Country of Country by Nicholas Doridoff. And this is a great book. He goes around sort of mostly the southern states of America, linking artists to the places where they lived, and it's got a load of sort of what they call the Nashville cats. So you've got all the writers and people in Nashville, and Harlan Howard is one that he talks about. Howard is a rolled up sleeve shirt of a man with a pair of narrow slits for eyes in a face that vodka and tequila have stained red. He prefers to forgo socks, but flashes his broad boyish grin often, as if in compensation. His thick hair is white, and his ample prize-fighter's nose makes waitresses feel softly towards him, even before he tips them too much. "I got a hell of a nose," he will sometimes say, without provocation. So, that's Harlan Howard. Great writer. And it's a good sounding album. He's not got the greatest pipes on him, but yeah, it's kind of straight ahead country, honky tonky kind of stuff. Other end of the spectrum, we've got Steve Earle's debut, Guitar Town. I picked this up for I think £3 with a couple of others, and I'll show those at a later date so you can guess which ones they're going to be. This is, came out he came out with this in 1986, I think. This is on MCA Records. I think it even came out on exactly the same day as it's either Dwight Yoakam or Randy Travis's first album. I remember hearing an interview with him where he talked about these artists that kind of got lumped together simply because their albums all came out in the same week. Guitar Town, Goodbye's all we've got. It's my favourites. One of my favourites on here is My Old Friend the Blues, a ballad, which I first heard played by the Proclaimers, and so it was interesting when I found out it actually wasn't one of their songs. It was a Steve Earle song. So yeah, can't go wrong with Steve Earle. Kind of a country Springsteen, I suppose, at this stage. Marvellous stuff. This isn't country, although they have been called electronic cowpunks, and that is Scott 4. And this is their first album, well, technically their first album. There was a 10-inch before this, which was a kind of a mini album, and this is called Recorded in State LP. And I wouldn't call them electronic cowpunk. I'd call them electronic folk, singer-songwritery kind of stuff. But they're definitely melding acoustic guitars and bleeping noises, in the same way I suppose that Beck does, and the Beta Band, if you're familiar with them. I really, it's an interesting album. It comes with a kind of it's got its own sleeve that the album sort of slots into. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's the standout track on this album is a song called "Your Kingdom to Dust," which I will put a link to that. I will do that down below because it's an amazing tune. And the 12-inch single, which I actually got, I've been on a bit of a Scott 4 buying frenzy recently, because I found them really cheap. You can get these, I mean, Beck and things like that are quite expensive, Beta Band, but these guys, for some reason, you can buy their second album, which is a 2-disc set, for under a tenner. It's called "Your Kingdom to Dust," and the 12-inch single has a 26-minute B-side, so that's value for money. Okay, so Scott 4, and I'll put that link to "Your Kingdom to Dust" below. The earlier stuff I'm showing at the moment, here we go. We've got the Blue Sky Boys, "The Sunny Side of Life," and this is on Rounder Records. Before the Everly Brothers, there was the Louvin Brothers, and before the Louvin Brothers, there was the Bollock Brothers, or the Blue Sky Boys, and they were kind of the first that came out in the sort of the late 20s into the 30s, and they were one of the big names in early string band, old-timey country. I mean, this predates bluegrass, so you can't call it bluegrass, it isn't. In fact, I need to talk to people about the use of the term bluegrass, because bluegrass, technically speaking, is a fairly modern invention of Bill Monroe. It's a lovely collection. It's got the song I was most familiar with is "A You from Dixie," but great. You got "Down on the Banks of the Ohio," "The Sunny Side of Life," "Katie Dear," "Dust on the Bible." Great stuff. Wonderful old 1930s. Although this is a Rounder Records, it doesn't actually tell me where it's when the recordings were from, unfortunately. No. Mostly drawn from 1947, so they're later recordings by them. We've got the Textones, "Midnight Mission." This was recently re-released as Carla Olson and the Textones, and that's Carla Olson. Now, I hadn't heard of. I picked this up the other day actually at Vinyl Tap in Huddersfield, which I think I've bought every record I want from. I don't think I need to go back there. That's really depressing, isn't it? And yeah, they were. This is from 84. 84 on Gold Mountain Records, and they came along at the wrong time, and they're split between being, on one hand, new wavy, so they've got a kind of a new wavy sound, but also they've got that kind of alternative country roots rock kind of thing, and I think for the new wavers it was far too country. And for the country people, it was far too new wave. You had a guy on saxophone. Some of it sounds a little bit like Springsteen as well. But it's a very fine album, and I know it's one of those bands that have only grown in stature. I mean, I hadn't actually heard of them, although I had heard of Carla Olson because she did a duet album with Gene Clark, and actually this has got Gene Clark singing some backing vocals and Ry Cooder doing some slide guitar on it. But yeah, really worth listening to. Grand Dame of country music, Gene Shepherd. This is Gene Shepherd on the Stetson. Yeah, got a couple more Stetsons. And yeah, she was a traditionalist, fought against the kind of rise of the pop country in the 70s, and stayed kind of true really to her honky tonk roots. She died last year. She was amongst, while everyone was moaning and kvetching about Prince and David Bowie, Gene Shepherd died as well. And unfortunately, there was something nasty towards the end of last year where her granddaughter was stabbed to death by her boyfriend, and Gene Shepherd's widowed husband had to shoot him and was injured himself as well in the process. So not very nice. Anyway, but Gene Shepherd, great album, and another album on Stetson, so I couldn't be happier. B.W. Stevenson, he's great looking. Look at his hair. I'm liking this guy already. I mean, look at him. How could I not buy that? Nah. I had heard this guy before I saw this. Picked it up for I think £1, and he's kind of called country pop, but I think that's kind of some of his late stuff. This is his first album from 1972 on RCA, and some of it's a bit light, but there's some kind of stuff that sounds very, very much like Townes Van Sant. There's a song on here called Lonesome Song, which sounds like it could be a Townes Van Sant song. There's a cover of Texas Morning, which I was familiar with because of a cover by Michael Naismith. So yeah, unfortunately he died in 1988, aged only 38, due to complications during an operation. One of those people with immense potential that unfortunately never got to the time to prove it really, that how good they were. A couple more until here we've got, look at this guy. This is Jack Waukeen Cochran, the Lonesome Drifter. Now I mean, quite frankly, you're going to buy that for the album cover, aren't you? Quite clearly, that's the greatest album cover that has ever been on a record. And this is the guy. This is Rockabilly Country. It's from '81 on the Rolling Rock British label. So he was around in the 50s doing rockabilly. When he first heard Elvis, he was out there, and he was originally known as Jimmy Jack Cochran, or Jack the Cat, apparently. But in the 70s, he went by this Waukeen, which was given to him by his maternal Native American grandmother as his own name. And yeah, he's an incredible looking guy. Look at him there with his, I don't know what type of car that is. I'm sure you in the States will know it. It's kind of spoilt a little bit by, let me see if I can see it here. This Peugeot 104 that's parked down here. I know it's a 104. I think it's a 104. My parents used to have a 104. So that's probably taken over here, or maybe somewhere in France or Germany, because he became part of the rockabilly revival in the late 70s. You know, like the Stray Cats, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Very pleased to get this. This is an eBay purchase, and this is Travis Wammack, Not For Sale. Great album. Another Muscle Shoals album. Finding a place between sort of country rock, country funk, and southern rock. And he's part of a kind of a movement that I am intending to try and put my country funk kind of records together, and so you might well see this one again. There's some great stuff on here. Cooking on the Front Burner, Looking for a Fox, Easy Evil, Love Rustler, I'm the Love Rustler. Yeah, really good stuff. I'm surprised he's not more well known. It's a bit of a weird album cover actually, because it feels like it should be a gatefold, but it isn't. And it's another one of those ones with a kind of it's a top loader, or is it a side loader? It's a bit confusing. Doesn't take much to confuse me. Okay, so those are my recent purchases and acquisitions. And finally, I'm going to finish up with some VCLT. I've got a record. James Griffith, the vinyl professor, has sent me a incredible record. He really shouldn't have. James, it's too much, man. And it is this Fistful of Fuzz, and it is a collection of 60s and maybe early 70s fuzz rock, slightly psych, garagey stuff. It starts with a cover of Purple Haze, and it's got an incredible cover of Season of the Witch by Donovan on it. Now, I'd seen Vinyl Richie show this, and he said it was an incredible collection. And I think at some point I said I didn't kind of have any of this sort of garage psych in my collection. So James, God bless him, hat off to you, sir, sent this along. It is a great record. You kind of think, you know, if it's mining the kind of the less well-known stuff from these periods, you'd have thought it would be rubbish. You thought, especially some of the records were actually never released; they were only ever pressed onto acetate. But it's just great. It is wonderful. John Doe and the acetates, the sound apparatus, the Prodigal, the Journey Back, Sound Synonymous, Lose Foos, and the Fiberglass Cornflake. Well, I mean, for the band titles anyway, and that cover. I think I take back about the Jack Waukeen Cochran. I think this might be the greatest album cover. Although that guitar neck looks incredibly wide. Anyway, James, the vinyl professor, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and an acrobat. Who was that? It's the Pink Panther. That's right. Anyway, so no, you're not an acrobat. Well, as far as I know, you're not an acrobat. So thank you so much for this. I was listening to it today. It's a marvellous record. I can't recommend it more highly or highly enough. So thank you, James. I've got some more stuff to do, so I'm going to probably try and get back a bit quicker this time with my next video. Until then, bye for now.